So pawb cynhorwyd Charlie McCoubrey ydw a fi ydi Owenydd Cynnor. Can I welcome everybody to today's meeting, which is a hybrid meeting.
Recording in progress.
The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and for those attending on Zoom to choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and on Zoom. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be able to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately, be respectful to each other, and that applies to members, officers, and everyone in the public gallery. Okay, so we'll turn on to the first agenda item, which is apologies for absence.
An apology received from Councillor Julie Fallon.
Okay, no other apologies. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest, code of local government. Members are reminded they must declare the existence and nature of their declared personal interest. Would anybody like to declare an interest? No. Agenda item 3 is urgent matters. Do we have any urgent matters? No. So agenda item 4, to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting. They're on pages 4 to 17. Members, are we happy with the minutes? If so, good proposer, Councillor Nigel. Mr. Dillwyn, can we show in favour of accepting the minutes? Okay, wonderful. So agenda item 5 is announcements by the leader. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Councillor Cathy to our first meeting as Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Children, Families and Safeguarding. She's shown a real industry already and a real organisation, which I think will be really helpful and beneficial. So welcome on board. I really look forward to working with you, Cathy, and I'm delighted that her predecessor is here so I can thank her in person, Liz, for all the incredible amount of hard work you put in on behalf of our residents. And I'm sure you'll continue to carry on that work for your own electorate in I'm sorry, I had to think there. So, thank you for all you've done. It's really great to see you here today. So that's all from me. The next agenda item is announcements for the Chief Executive. Okay, nothing from the Chief Exec. So agenda item 7 is to review the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. Members, that's on pages 18 to 41. Any questions, comments or observations? If not, can we show for in favour of accepting the Forward Work Programme? Okay, so we'll move on to the first substantial item, which sits in the Sustainable Economy portfolio. It's a mobile network improvement open access agreements. You'll find the report on pages 42 to 55. And I'll hand over to Councillor Nigel to take us through this report.
Government recognises the importance of mobile connectivity to local economies and encourages local government to make every effort to improve connectivity where they can. I feel it's our duty to follow that advice of government and enable mobile connectivity by entering into an open access agreement with Freshwave. We will then hopefully see the improvements in the and investment from mobile operators come forward. I therefore wish to move the recommendation 2.1. I will now ask Ellen Edward, our Head of Economic Development, to take you through the report, whilst we have with us Rob Brooks, the IT Infrastructure and Solutions Manager, and Ifan Rowlands, the Street Lighting Manager, who will be happy to answer any technical questions should you may have any.
Great, Diolch, Nigel. Ellen?
Well, dyna ni. Diolch yn fawr, Nigel.
Thank you, Nigel.
I'll take you through the report, which is on page 42, as Councillor Charlie's already mentioned, of your pack. So details really in that, Conwy County Council's digital strategy clearly identifies the importance of improving digital and mobile connectivity in Conwy for residents and businesses. Although the fixed broadband speeds have improved in Conwy in recent years, mobile connectivity is of a variable quality, with only 61% of properties having 5G coverage, compared to 74% for Wales and 85% for the UK as a whole. So the issue of poor connectivity to the mobile network is a long-standing one. For Conwy, we've received numerous complaints from residents in town centres, town centre users, primarily Llandudno, as Councillor Nigel's mentioned, including some channelled through the constituency members of Parliament and Assembly members. The business sector have also raised concerns over mobile signal coverage, as a number of them rely on mobile signal to provide card payments for purchases, etc., within their premises. And also previous experiences of events taking place in the county have also pointed to the scale of the problem, with numbers of those attending citing connectivity issues whilst at those events. The issue is therefore close to the heart of the people of Conwy, as the impact that it has on Llandudno, our primary tourist town, and other towns within the county is quite significant from an economic development point of view as well. Although it's not our responsibility as local authority to improve the private mobile network, we are keen to play a role in facilitating the improvement of signal where necessary and where possible. There are two general options for the council to consider. The A is the exclusive access agreement with individual mobile network operators and an open access agreement with a third party who will then work with one or more mobile network operator within. In both cases, the outcomes of the agreements allows the mobile phone operator to install small cells or signal repeater units on council assets, usually street lighting columns, and these cells extend and improve the network coverage. And I've also put an appendix there of the potential benefits in Appendix 2 of the report. There are companies out there that provide an exclusive contract with the local authority, but these contracts can possibly earn more revenue for the authority as the asset is ultimately rented, but the council has a lot less control and say on how that asset is managed. In order to ensure that control, the open access agreement approach is more favourable as it's fully flexible. The council can retain full control of the asset and can determine which assets can be used as and when necessary. It also enables more than one mobile network operator to deploy cells within the county, improving the user experience. So I will move on. The presence of an open access agreement in the county sends a clear message to mobile network operators that the area is one in which investments will be cost and time effective and can increase the chances of that area being prioritised for investment over others. So working with Ambition North Wales, we've identified a potential viable solution which would require collaboration with a private company. The approach is expected to be cost neutral to the council. However, a partnership would be required to enable an open access agreement for the company to deploy technology on some council assets to assist in the improvement of networks. There are multiple private companies out there operating exclusive agreements. However, research indicates that a useful example to aid consideration is Freshwave. Having discussed with our procurement team, which is something that was raised with us initially, the advice given is that by establishing an open access agreement process, we are not procuring. We're providing the company with an opportunity from which they will benefit through their dealings with the mobile phone operators. However, if the concept today of an open access agreement is approved, we will publish a PIN notice on Celta Wales, inviting any company interested to contact us to ensure openness, transparency, non-discrimination, equal opportunity and integrity. So if we decide to go with Freshwave today, they would manage all relationships with the mobile network operators and incur the costs for officer time, legal costs, damage and ongoing maintenance. The council would reserve the right to terminate and or amend the asset available to Freshwave at any point. Once the OAA is in place, the open access agreement is in place, Freshwave would work with the mobile network operator to identify where services could be improved. The actual location of small cell technology is a commercial decision, and hopefully immediate interest would focus on Llandudno being our primary tourist destination and our awareness of the issues that are experienced there. So key considerations for each service are outlined in 3.23 around planning, finance and IT, ERF and communities and businesses. And if in support today, the next steps would be a legal department and Freshwave to draft a legal agreement on an open access platform, which we've already started to look at. Conway Traffic and Network Management, street lighting, to provide an asset list to Freshwave. Freshwave to work alongside the local authority to see feasibility of use of specific assets, and then to liaise with major mobile network operators to improve the coverage. So our options, 3 options in front of us, is option 1, as per recommendation 2.1 to 2.3, the council enters into an open access agreement with Freshwave to realise the benefits. Option 2 is to enter into an exclusive access agreement with individual mobile networks as per 3.10. But as I've already mentioned, while these contracts can possibly earn some more revenue for the council, we have a lot less control how the asset is managed. And the third option is to do nothing. You'll see that we have engaged quite lengthy with different departments within Welsh Government and UK Government, and consultation has been carried out with our Cabinet Member for Sustainable Economy at 5.2. Resource implications should be cost neutral for the local authority, and we can also recoup any other costs that we've incurred up to now from the North Wales Economic Ambition Board digital programme. Corporate plan outcomes are there linked, as are the links to the 5 ways of working within the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and also the goals of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. There are some risks there that we've identified, but also some mitigations for those risks as well. So going back to the recommendation that Councillor Nigel has proposed in 2.1 is that the Cabinet approve a proposal for entering an open access agreement with Freshwave Group. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, Joel Gallen, really appreciate taking us through that report so comprehensively. I'll open up to any questions, comments, observations, members. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I really welcome this. I know the frustrations. I was at the main exhibition of The Longest Yarn the other week, and in Trinity Church it was packed with holiday makers. I mean, there were queues and large queues to go and see the exhibition, and I was sitting next to 2 ladies who were complaining about the connectivity. So it is a problem, and we know not only the holiday makers but the residents as well. So I really do welcome this, and I don't know whether Councillor Nigel proposed it, but I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, Nigel, you did propose it, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Any other comments or observations? Councillor Penny?
Thank you, Leader. Can I just ask, the Conway officers, will their time be taken, or will Freshwave do all the work themselves without consultating? On the assets where the mast or whatever will be going, will you be requiring involvement with Conway officers?
Yeah, yes, there will be. They will be heavily involved with ERF will be involved in locations of the cells and that, and locating the identifying the assets.
And with this new initiative that we possibly take on, is that going to be significant time that ERF will be involved?
I wouldn't expect that it would be once the assets are identified, then it will be over to Freshwave then to be liaising with the mobile operators.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, really pleased to see this come forward. As Chris said, there's a really identifiable problem there, and it's a really practical way to deliver solutions at no cost or risk to this council. I think it's best that we do an open access agreement. We don't want just one supplier having the sort of monopoly on the signal, because not everyone uses the same phone company. So to encourage that, I think it's really good. Do you want to come back in, Ellen?
Yeah, since we've been in discussions with this open access agreement, we've already had an interest from another company as well, which we've stalled, dependent on the decision today. So yeah, hopefully if because it's once we have one agreement in place, there's nothing stopping other companies coming through, and the more interest there is, the more likelihood that we do get connectivity tackled.
No, that's really encouraging. Okay, so there's no more questions or observation, members. We've had a proposer and we've had a seconder. Can members show they're in favour of recommendation 2.1? Okay, wonderful. So we'll move on to agenda item 9. which sits in the audit policy and performance portfolio. It's the anti-harassment policy. You'll find the report on pages 56 to 107, and I'll hand over to Councillor Chris to take us through this report.
Yep, thank you, Leader. This extensive updated anti-harassment policy in front of Cabinet today reflects the changes in legislation which we need to abide by. The Worker Protection Amendment of Equality Act 2020, Act 2023 took effect from the end of last month. So this is very timely. The main legislative change is that as an employer, we must work to prevent sexual harassment, anticipating scenarios where and when this may occur. Waiting until an incident arises is not acceptable, as we should already have carefully evaluated reasonable preventative steps in place. So this preventative duty is an anticipatory duty. The focus on support and well-being for victims of any harassment is embedded in the review, and the decision has been taken, and I really welcome this, Leader, not to have a separate anti-sexual harassment policy, but to apply the same standards right across all the protected characteristics. 3.8 on page 58 shows the key updates to the policy. You will see it includes items on mandatory induction training, proactive risk assessments, the development of complaint options that include a completely anonymous route, and there is a section addressing third-party harassment. Examples of the latter are clear procurement provisions and warning notices. So Appendix B, starting on page 91, gives examples of behaviours that would constitute harassment, and Appendix C on page 93 gives a flowchart of the complaints process. In conclusion, Leader, modern HR policies should have clear procedures and be user-friendly. I think we all agree on that. They should also refer to other linked and overlapping policies, which should be updated as well. So once approval has been given today, further formatting work will take place to ensure that the final policy is clearly defined to staff raising a complaint and managers addressing a complaint. I commend our HR team, and particular Emma Battersby, who's here with us this afternoon, the Principal HR Business Partner, for embarking on this thorough piece of work, so we as a local authority fully meet the proactive preventative duty. The recommendation is at 2.1 on page 57, and I propose that Cabinet approves this revised policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Again, members, any questions, comments, observations? Kathy.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Chris. I'm delighted to see this policy brought before us. I particularly welcome the fact that the same standards are being applied across all protected characteristics. I think that's a really progressive move, and I would be delighted to second. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I've got Councillor Paul and Councillor David. Paul?
Preference would have been to have scrutinised this policy, finance and resources, and involved other councillors, but it's here today and this is where we need to scrutinise it. Like Chris and Kathy, I welcome it coming forward and grateful to Emma for doing the work on it. But it does, for me, raise many issues, really. And I know we have the clear concept of separation of powers between policy and operational matters. But I am concerned that when it comes to harassment cases, whether it's in local authorities, and obviously there's a very controversial one going through in Gwynedd at the moment, and and others in the UK context, which have been equally controversial and in the press. And we've even had in Wales more than one political party with significant harassment issues within their organisations towards staff. And it seems to me that when these things happen, whether it's officers, directors of private companies, politicians, we see people heading for the hills in all directions, if I can describe it like that, with difficulties in people taking responsibility and accountability for what's gone on. And it seems to me that we need some more information about what is actually happening in Conway. And I know this is where we're getting to the issue of separation of powers and what can be known and what cannot be known. I'd like to ask the question, how many grievances and disciplinary cases involving harassment have actually occurred in the last year or the last couple of years? Because I don't remember when I looked at the workforce documents that came through in the last month, that being broken down to identify, if you like, the scale of the problem that we have with harassment. So I hope that answer could be given. I think also we need to look again at how we fund this, what I would call modernization of our HR services, because it doesn't seem to me tenable to continually fund this from pretty negligible reserves. And if we are serious of taking this forward as part of the modernization program for 25-26, we need a sort of systematic joining up of funding to ensure there are the resources there to make a difference. So those are my comments. I'd be interested to hear of other cabinet members, other members' views on it. But I think, in a sense, this is such an important contemporary issue for all of us. And I wouldn't want to see in Conway, for example, what's happening in Gwynedd at the moment, because I would hope our policies and our operation is more robust.
So yeah, just to be clear, what we're discussing today is approving this policy moving forward, but I'll let Fran touch on the issues that you've raised, Paul.
Thanks, Councillor Paul, and yeah, thanks for the support. I'll deal with the latter question first. That any support for training is most welcomed. But to give assurance on that, we are looking at how do we build up the resource and forward work programme to ensure that all our staff are trained in terms of expected standards of behaviour. In fact, we started some work with trade union colleagues on that just on Friday afternoon, and we will be rolling out more awareness sessions in the new year in relation to expected behaviour and a zero tolerance approach to any form of harassment. In terms of being transparent around cases of harassment, we do report on that within the employment monitoring report, which was brought to FROSC 2 weeks ago. It cannot go into the detail of specific cases, and we do have to anonymise numbers if the numbers are particularly low, because we have to protect confidentiality. That said, to give assurance, one of the key developments within this policy that we've spent quite a lot of time looking at, and we will continue to refine, is not just updating the policy to comply with legislation, but to make the policy clearer that if you take the brave decision, quite frankly, to come forward and say that behaviour has not been appropriate, that you will be supported through that process. And that has come out from lessons learned and listening to lived experience, and is fundamental to this policy, and will continue to refine it so that that assurance is given to people. You know, if you have concerns, speak to us and we will take action and support you through that process. So that's why the cover report makes it clear that there will be further refinements, because we want to make it even clearer. It's still a very long policy, and I am, you know, second Councillor Chris's comments that thanks to Emma for working on this. It's very comprehensive, but we will be doing further work to refine it, to make it clearer to members of staff how they can follow the process and how they can be supported. Thank you.
Yeah, briefly if you can, Paul.
I think the problem that I have is I don't have any understanding, as I sit here now, of the scale or smallness of the harassment problem in Conway. I have no understanding of the numbers involved. I have no understanding whether it's a particular problem in a particular department, or whether it's in relation to a particular protected characteristic. And I think that is the worrying thing for me, because if something goes terribly wrong, quite rightly, I as a councillor, the cabinet member, the strategic director should be called to account for something going wrong. And at the moment, if I don't have any understanding of whether it's a large problem, a small problem within Conway, it's very difficult to feel you've got responsibility for it, because it's all in the dark. And that's what I'm concerned. And if you look at the cases that have come into the press recently, that has been the issue. People say, I didn't know it was a problem in our organisation. But obviously some people in that organisation definitely knew it was a problem and weren't doing anything about it. And that's what we don't seem to be engaging with as councillors today. And that's what concerns me.
The Chief Executive.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Paul. I think it's clearly a very, very, very important issue, isn't it? And the examples you give, you know, it's incredibly powerful at the moment, isn't it? We've seen it in a varied array of public and private sector organisations. I think going back to the policy itself, I think the purpose of the policy, and you know, we've had extensive consultation on the policy. I must admit, I would completely agree about the work that's gone in. This went through the Equality Steering Group as well, which was great. It was the first time really that we've been able to do that and get the views of staff. I guess moving forward, I guess there is a line here, isn't there, in terms of what is operational, in terms of how we undertake the work, and how, as managers, as senior officers, that we scrutinise and learn lessons. I think the purpose of this policy is to do that, isn't it? But actually, the purpose of the policy is to make it easier for people to come forward. And I think that has been an issue in all these examples we've seen. It has been an issue around people not coming forward, and only coming forward when others have. And therefore, for us, I think this is definitely a starting point around trying to bring that culture forward to enable people to bring those things forward. As Fran said, I think it's really difficult to bring actual cases before democracy, because they are so sensitive in their very nature. These people who we are trying to encourage to come forward should not be put in a position where all that personal, very personal information is then scrutinised. And you can try and anonymise it however you want, but at the numbers we've got, it could end up that you could, you know, so it could have the counter the counter effect of actually making it less likely that people come forward. So I agree, but I in terms of we need to make sure that we're doing it right. And I think this policy is the first step for me in you know, that this policy is predominantly to change in terms of the legislation requirement, but it does much more than that as far as I'm concerned. And the scrutiny it's gone through, especially with officers, actual officers on the ground, is incredibly important that that is then promoted and that people know about it. And that goes to the training point, doesn't it? You know, that people should be aware. We've done quite a bit over the past 12 to 18 months around trying to improve the offer on training, especially around protected characteristics, which I think, from my perspective, I think we needed to, absolutely. But moving forward, I think that will be the test. How can we prioritize some training that we think that we need moving forward in order to get us to where we really want to be? But thank you for the question anyway. Thank you.
And Councillor David Carr and then Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I've listened to what's been said, and yeah, it's great to have this policy, which we have to have because we have to be compliant with the law. So this is like a compliance, really, policy we're putting forward. But I'm a bit concerned what the Chief Executive said about people coming forward. My experience is if you do come forward, then you're penalised. That's the experience that I've got, that, you know, that harassment and abuse and intimidation are never acceptable. You come forward about that, then you find yourself being attacked, and that shouldn't be happening. So it's all about enforcement, really. It's great to have this policy. You know, I'm not criticising the policy, but where's the enforcement? And that really is what people are asking, because people do feel frightened to come forward because they say, well, you know, if I complain about this, then, you know, then I'm going to be penalised, and that shouldn't be happening. So I think needs to be a change in this council. I think we need to, particularly with members with protected characteristics, I think we do need to break down those barriers. There's a lot of barriers to people with protected characteristics that work or are councillors in this council. We need to break those. But I find it very good what Denbighshire have done when they specifically addressed this and said that they are going to break down the barriers that people face when they've got protected characteristics. So, yeah, so I'm not criticising the policy. I'm not criticising the law, which I agree with. What my point, that I'm labouring a little bit now, is that there isn't the enforcement. So it's great to have this policy, Fran, but who's going to enforce it? And especially when people do feel intimidated in coming forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Councillor David. Just to clarify, this is a policy for our staff, and therefore, if staff are supported to come forward and raise concerns, we will follow through an appropriate independent investigation, and that can, depending on the circumstance, lead to the disciplinary process where the member of staff will be taken through a disciplinary hearing. So there are processes, and I guess the key message that we are working through as part of the EDI steering group is exactly that we will support people and that we will take action within the realms of employment legislation for our officers.
Okay, thanks. I've got Councillor Cathy and then Councillor Emily.
Thank you, Leader. I personally think this is about much more than compliance with the law. Here is another policy that we're bringing forward, I'm delighted to see, that is going beyond the requirements of legislation. So I feel it's far, far more than just a tick box exercise. It's about our ethos and our values. And interestingly, I think Councillor David's comments about coming forward are really, really important, and they respond in a way to Councillor Paul's request for statistics, because while I accept that benchmarking is really important so we know where we are and how we're improving, if sharing statistics in any way highlights who individuals might be, we absolutely cannot share those statistics. So as a woman of colour, if there was something about I don't know, a woman of colour in the marketing department of a company I was working for, and I was the only one. It's obviously me. We absolutely must protect our staff, and it might sound frustrating, Councillor Paul, but that is why we can't share the stats. And from what I'm hearing, when it's a very tiny amount of people, then that risk is greater. And it sounds to me as though it is a really low number. So maybe we can just take comfort from that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Councillor Emily.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add my thanks, really. I think throughout this policy, I agree with Councillor Kathy. I think it goes way above and beyond what we have to do. But it's you know, phrases like guided by your choices. It's how you feel comfortable with doing it. And a lot of it is brave to come forward with any complaint of this nature. And it is quite scary and daunting. One of the things when I used to work for a union that was really tricky when you had people coming forward is the policies weren't very tight. It was woolly, and it was hard work to try and get people through it. I think the fact that how this has been written in such a way that it's really person-centered and it's really based around that individual that is coming forward, and absolutely there is a process in place, and we have to follow that to make sure that it's fair. But I think it does take into account the sensitivity of how much it does take to come forward with things like this. So I just wanted to add my thanks for a really comprehensive policy, and I'm really pleased to support this.
Any other questions, comments, members? I entirely agree. I think it's really good to see that preventative duty, anticipatory duty, and I think it's a really clear and well-written piece of work. So many thanks for that. We've had there's no other questions. I'll propose Councillor Chris. It's been seconded by Councillor Kathy. Can we show for in favour of accepting the report, members? Okay, wonderful. So agenda item 10, exempt items, Local Government Act 1972, section 100A and schedule 12A, access to information. To consider passing a resolution on the provisions of section 100A brackets 4 of the above act to exclude the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following item, as it is likely that if present there will be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 14 of part 4, schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Can I have somebody propose if we're happy to go into private session? Emily, Nigel, I'm sure for in favour, members. Okay, thank you.